Okay, so in this video, I want to talk to you about if you've been in a relationship with somebody who has borderline personality disorder um, after the breakup. Um, there's a very good chance you're going to feel like there's just no closure. It's not like other relationships. When you break up, it can be stressful and traumatic and all kinds of other horrible things, but there's still usually this logical sense of events that have led up to it, and it's been an increasing event of lack of communication or conflict or betrayal or something like that, and then there's this breakup and you fight and even though it's horrible, it may feel unresolved, but there's still this closure. You never get that feeling with somebody with borderline. And this is one of the worst parts about it. I think this is one of the parts that pulls you back in. When they hoover you back in, I think part of it is because there's never this closure that you feel. And so I just want to share with you that if you're having that feeling, that is just what it means to be with somebody with borderline. There's never closure, ever. And I'm analyzing why that is, at least within myself. And I think part of it is because the borderlines behavior, they're when they break up with you, it's usually for some really irrational, imagined reason in their own head. And I made another video about, maybe I did, I don't know, but if I didn't, I also don't think it's the reason that they give is not why they break up. It may be something, it triggers them, but the truth is that I've come to realize that borderlines are triggered all the time. They're triggered by, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a huge percentage of, what you say and do. They're being triggered all the time. So it's just the triggers that they choose to focus on, which really is the excuse to avoid intimacy. I really believe that even though the behavior is and the symptom is that you do or say something that triggers them, and then they blow that out of proportion in their head, and then they devalue you. They either love you or they hate you, and so they go into the hate you stage. But I believe that the breakups are as a result of the fear of intimacy. With me, and maybe you can look at your experience, but with me, with the relationship I was in, as I look back on it now, of course, in the time you're listening to what they say as though you're taking what they say as it means something and it's rational. But the truth is, the reasons they're giving really aren't the reasons. So, it's taken me a while to figure that out. But when I look at every breakup, just before the breakup, there was always a deep bonding that happened. So it wasn't, and this is what's confusing, because with non-borderlines, most of the time, what happens is there's a lack of intimacy. So you do or say something which actually causes actual harm to the bonding in the relationship. And that's what triggers a non-BDP to say, hey, you slept with that guy, or hey, you did this or you did that. And when you do that over time, it creates a rift, an actual rift in reality. And then after, non-borderlines go off, more than borderlines. They go off of actual experiences that happen over time. That's what molds our feelings about the other person. It's not that we're not like borderlines and we get stimulated and you said this and it pissed me off, but the thing that's confusing is that it's not the experience that does it. It's simply the 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 trigger in them, which then gives the excuse for what I think they're looking to do all the time, which is they're looking for reasons to separate because they're afraid of the connection, because ironically they're afraid of being rejected. And so the more you connect, the more vulnerable you become. And it's being rejected when you're vulnerable. That's why, if you're with one that likes to break up, it's really, they're not breaking up with you because they don't want to be with you. They probably really want to be with you. They're breaking up with you because that desire to be with you increases when there's a bonding that occurs, which then increases the fear of rejection, which then makes them paranoid. And then, I'm going to take my ball and go home. I'm going to reject you before you reject me. And this is probably all happening instantaneously, and it's happening on an unconscious level. And so, for me, the lack of closure came because it just increasingly got less and less reasonable. And the rejections became more and more intense. Whereas in the beginning, the rejections were, the rejections, but then there was this kind of like, you're not sure, well, we can talk about it. And then you could talk them back into, realizing, oh, yeah, I overreacted, and okay, I'll let you back in. And yeah, now we're good again for, 10 minutes or whatever it was. So, if you're looking to get closure, closure is about rational thinking. It means that your brain is trying to come up with a rational reason why something hasn't worked. And that's why you sit down and you say, you did this and you make me feel this way and you do that. And, lots of times that's just garbage. But, if you're really connected to somebody and over time and then both people just go, yeah, there's just nothing left, is there? But for me, what just didn't make sense, and to be honest, I'm still trying to make sense of it, and it's not making sense, which is why I don't have this feeling of closure, is that the last experience that I had with her was a really deep, beautiful friendship, emotional bonding session. And, I was crying about this, and she was taking care of me. Normally that means you're bonding, and that's going to create a longer lasting relationship. Even if the romance doesn't work out, the friendship grows out of that. And it just didn't make any sense at all that she would reject me so harshly and accuse me of such horrible things that I was thinking, which weren't true. And so, and then of course, then she wanted no contact. But even if there was contact, again, the idea of talking it through with a borderline as though you're talking with somebody who's thinking rationally and making rational decisions, and then, acting on those rational decisions, they just don't. They don't make rational decisions. They have a mental illness. They're insane. That they really, with the girl I was with, for her, the straw that broke the camel's back was that I had mentioned off the cuff about how sometimes we can't trust our intuition when it comes to making decisions about ourselves, because we can confuse our own agendas and fears and confusion for actual intuition. And I mentioned the word magical thinking, and but I think that told me a lot, because what that tells me is that that's the only source of safety she has is her intuition, or her belief that she has this intuition, which in reality, when I look back on it, she said, my intuition tells me to do this, my intuition tells me to do that. It's a toss-up. Half of them ended up working out, half of them didn't, including me. Her intuition was the reason why she sought me out. So, they're so deluded that they're unwilling to look at, when their intuition doesn't work. And I think that's, that what frightened her the most was that I was now a stimulus that was giving her an alternative to intuition, and I realized that she has nothing else. If you take her intuition away, the only thing left is the anxiety. That's it. And so, I mean, I guess I just have to give myself closure that, I'm trying to get closure is a rational thing you do with rational, sane people. You can't get closure with somebody who makes really like diametrically opposed decisions to anything close to rationality. Because all the evidence that in her world was that this man was there and loved her and was her friend, and she didn't make the decision based on the evidence and her experience. She made the decision based on simply a fear, and then she looked for a reason to justify the fear. I really believe that's how it happened. So, bottom line is, don't expect any closure. You won't get it. That's all. And again, the kindest thing you can do for a borderline is not have contact with them, not interact with them unless they are actively in therapy and working and acknowledging that they have the disease. If they're not in that state, the kindest thing you can do, if they haven't already destroyed the relationship, if they have, just don't contact them. When they try to hoover you back in, just don't respond. And if you are with them and you're still trying to make it work and you're going through and you're really unhappy and feeling crazy, the kindest thing you can do is tell them, I love you, but the dynamic of our relationship is too stressful and unhealthy for me. I'm going to have to leave and I'm going to break contact with you. If you decide to get help after you've gotten help from a qualified psychologist for borderline, give me a call. Until then, unfortunately, I just can't. I'm not the right person for you. It's the kindest thing you can do, because anything other than that, you're just, you're placating their insanity, and it doesn't help them. They really need to have the continued experience of life telling them that their way of doing things isn't working, and then they can finally, when it gets bad enough, reach out for help. Okay? So, I'm going to try and follow my own advice. There you go. That's it. You can't get closure with a borderline.